Imagine a warm spring morning. You're standing in your garage, drenched in sweat, surrounded by boxes of holiday decorations, old toys, tools you haven't touched in years. You're just trying to create some order, make some space. Your young son runs by, asking you to come play. You hesitate. Just a second, you say, as you rearrange a pile of clutter. He runs off. You miss the moment. And that, right there, is when the truth hits you like a freight train. You haven't just been hoarding stuff. You've been missing life. Hey everyone, I'm Bix, and welcome back to Bix Book Summary, the channel where we don't just break down books, we explore how their lessons can reshape the way we live, love, and show up for what truly matters. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because we're all about deep, soul-shifting content that stays with you long after the video ends. Today, we're diving into a book that's not just about decluttering your home, but about clearing space for your life to finally breathe. The More of Less by Joshua Becker isn't a manual on minimalism in the way most people think. It's not about deprivation. It's about discovery. It's about realizing that when we own less, we gain more time, more freedom, more connection. This story begins in a cluttered garage like so many of ours. Joshua was knee-deep in stuff, sorting, stacking, sweating. His son played outside, the sun shining, laughter echoing. That's when it happened. "Dad, will you come play with me?" A small voice, a simple request, one that cracked something open inside him. He paused, conflicted, because in that instant he saw the cost of everything he was holding on to. He wasn't just organizing, he was postponing his life. And when a neighbor casually mentioned, "That's why my daughter's a minimalist," something clicked. That comment wasn't just a throwaway line. It was a turning point. It made him question not just the clutter in his garage, but the clutter in his life. And from that day on, he didn't just clean. He cleared. He let go. Not for the sake of letting go, but to make room for what really mattered. Minimalism, as Joshua came to define it, wasn't about owning nothing. It was about being owned by nothing. It was about reclaiming your time, your energy, your focus, and pouring them back into the people and passions that bring you alive. So in this video, we're going to walk through that transformation. Because this isn't a story about junk. It's a story about joy. And just like Joshua's journey started in a garage, yours might start in a drawer, a calendar, or even a thought you've been holding onto too tightly. When most people hear the word minimalism, they instantly picture bare white walls, a single lonely chair, maybe a suitcase sitting in the middle of an echoing room. It feels cold, extreme, like a life stripped of comfort and personality. Some even imagine dramatic moments. Someone sweeping everything off a shelf into a donation box, making some bold declaration to start over from scratch. But that's not what minimalism looked like for Joshua Becker. And that's certainly not what the More of Less is trying to sell you. For Joshua, minimalism wasn't about counting your possessions or trying to live with the least number of socks possible. It wasn't about shrinking your life down. It was about expanding it. And it all started with one simple, powerful question. What if the things I own are standing in the way of the life I want? As he and his wife Kim began removing the extra, the items that weren't useful, beautiful, or meaningful, they discovered something they hadn't expected. They didn't feel like something was missing. They felt like something had been found. There was room now. Room to play on the floor with their kids. Room to think clearly without visual noise. Room to breathe, to pause, to rest without being surrounded by the guilt of unfinished projects or unused items. But the transformation wasn't just physical. As the clutter cleared from their home, something deeper started to shift. They found emotional space, mental peace, the kind of quiet you don't realize you're craving until you finally experience it. Because every item we own whispers to us. It needs to be dusted, repaired, organized, remembered, maintained. Even the things we never use quietly pull on our attention. And slowly, without realizing it, we trade our energy for their presence. Joshua began to realize that the life he was chasing, the life filled with more square footage, more upgrades, more style, wasn't actually bringing him the peace he longed for. It was only making him busier, more distracted, more weighed down. And yet, with every drawer they cleared, every item they gave away, something beautiful began to rise in its place. More calm in their mornings, more connection at the dinner table, more clarity around what actually mattered and what never did. Because that's the real gift of minimalism. not the emptiness, but the intentionality. It's not about having less for the sake of less. It's about finally having enough. Enough space, enough time, enough presence to live a life that feels like yours. Joshua isn't trying to turn you into a minimalist monk. He's not asking you to live out of a backpack or sacrifice everything you love. He's simply inviting you to look around and ask some honest questions. Does this item bring me joy? Or does it just sit there, collecting dust? Does it support the life I'm trying to build? Or is it something I've been holding on to out of habit, guilt, or fear? Is this thing giving to my life, or is it quietly taking from it? And when you start asking those questions, something surprising happens. You realize that the stuff you thought you needed was never what was holding your life together. It was actually what was holding it back. That shift, that realization that you're allowed to let go, that's where freedom begins. In the next part, we'll explore just how far that freedom can go. From your finances and mental clarity, to your health, your relationships, and even your sense of purpose. Because this journey into minimalism isn't just about your home, it's about coming home to yourself. At first glance, minimalism might look like nothing more than a weekend project. Another name for a deep clean. You imagine someone clearing out their closet, hauling old boxes to the thrift store, tossing out the kitchen gadgets that only ever saw the light of day once. And yes, Joshua Becker's journey did start that way, with a garage full of forgotten things and the desire to finally get it under control. But as the clutter disappeared, something much deeper began to reveal itself. Because the real shift wasn't just in what he let go of, it was in what he began to reclaim. As the rooms in his house started to breathe, so did his life. With every drawer he emptied, a little more clarity crept in. With every shelf he cleared, the noise began to settle. And before he even realized it, minimalism had sparked a quiet but profound transformation. Not just in his home, but in his habits, his health, his finances, and his family. It started small. Less stuff meant less to clean, less to manage, fewer things to trip over or lose, fewer moments spent digging through junk drawers or wondering where that one missing item went. But those small conveniences quickly gave way to something bigger, relief from the constant mental weight of chaos. A kind of peace that comes not just from tidiness, but from lightness. And as Joshua and Kim embraced this new rhythm, something else happened. Something they hadn't seen coming. Their spending dropped. Not because they suddenly became frugal, but because the desire to consume, to upgrade, to chase the next best thing, it just started to fade. They weren't pulled in by the clearance racks or the limited time offers. They stopped trying to fill a void with purchases and started filling their lives with purpose. And here's the twist. The less they bought, the more they had to give. With fewer bills and fewer unnecessary purchases, they had more to offer. More generosity, more experiences, more shared moments. They gave to causes they cared about. They traveled. They poured into people rather than possessions. It's the paradox that minimalism quietly reveals. That true abundance often begins with less, not more. But the ripple effects didn't end with money. Joshua also noticed his health shifting. Not in some dramatic fitness overhaul, but in subtler, more sustainable ways. There was more time to cook wholesome meals, more space for walks, less mindless snacking and more mindful movement. But perhaps the biggest change was emotional. That low-grade hum of stress, the kind that builds silently when your environment feels out of control, began to fade. He felt calmer, more grounded, more capable of handling the unpredictability of everyday life. And in that stillness, something beautiful happened. Clarity. When you're not buried under things or caught in a constant cycle of maintenance, you start to think differently. Your mind, once scattered across hundreds of tiny to-dos, begins to settle. And in that space, a question rises. A question that minimalism doesn't give you the answer to, but gently leads you to ask, what kind of life do I actually want to live? That's the magic of minimalism, not in what it strips away, but in what it makes possible. For Joshua and his family, it created a path back to presence, to intention, to joy. And if you're wondering where to begin, don't worry. You don't have to sell everything or live in a tiny house. In the next part, we'll talk about how you can ease into this journey in a way that's simple, manageable, and sustainable. Because the most powerful transformations often begin with just one small step. If the idea of minimalism feels overwhelming, like something reserved for ultra-disciplined people with color-coded wardrobes and perfectly curated homes, you're not alone. Joshua Becker gets that, and that's exactly why his approach feels so refreshingly real. Because he didn't become a minimalist overnight. He didn't purge his house in a dramatic weekend spree. He didn't post before and after photos to show how tidy everything suddenly became. He started with one small act, a single shelf, one messy drawer, just one moment where he paused and asked, "Do I really need this?" And that's the gentle brilliance of his message. You don't have to change everything at once. You don't need a grand plan, or a label, or a set of rules. You just need to begin with one honest decision, one act of letting go. Joshua reminds us that minimalism isn't a competition. It's not about owning less than someone else or achieving some Instagram-worthy aesthetic. It's not about fitting into a box. It's about stepping out of one. It's about being honest with yourself, about what's bringing value to your life and what's quietly draining it. So he suggests starting with what he calls easy wins. That one spot in your home that always frustrates you, the junk drawer that feels like a black hole, the closet that makes you sigh every morning. Begin there. Don't overthink it, just open the drawer, take everything out, and one by one, hold each item in your hands and ask yourself, do I use this? Do I love this? Is this adding value to my life, or is it just taking up space? And as you begin to remove what no longer serves you, you'll notice something unexpected. You're not creating emptiness, you're creating room. Room for peace, room for focus, room for breath, rest, clarity. Room for the things your heart has been whispering for, the things that clutter often drowns out. And here's the beautiful twist. This process builds momentum. With each small space you clear, you feel lighter. You start to crave that lightness. You notice how much easier it is to start your day when your closet holds only clothes you actually wear. You notice how your evenings feel more peaceful when your living room isn't filled with visual noise. And before long, you realize this isn't just about stuff anymore. It's about energy, attention, intention. And it's not about perfection. It never was. It's about purpose. Joshua compares minimalism to a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger your sense of clarity becomes. The more you practice saying no to the unnecessary, the easier it becomes to say yes to the truly meaningful. And maybe most powerfully, it gives you back your power. The power to define what your life looks like. The power to choose presence over pressure, meaning over maintenance, moments over material. Coming up in the final part, we'll reflect on what the more of less ultimately reveals. Not just about our homes, but about our hearts. Because at its core, this isn't a story about decluttering. It's a story about coming back to what matters most. At the very heart of the more of less, there's a quiet but powerful question that stays with you long after you close the book. What if everything you truly want in life is already within reach? If only you had the space to notice it. That's the thread running through Joshua Becker's journey. A journey that didn't strip his life down to nothing. It filled it up with meaning, with joy, with what he'd always been chasing but never quite finding through more stuff. Because what Joshua discovered is freedom doesn't come from owning more. It comes from needing less. Happiness doesn't live inside the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next square foot of living space. It lives in moments. Playing with your kids without distraction, sitting in a calm room without visual noise, waking up and actually having time to breathe before the day begins. Minimalism, the way Joshua teaches it, isn't about deprivation. It's not about loss. It's not about sacrifice. It's about trading up. You trade clutter for clarity. You trade stress for stillness. You trade the constant hum of distraction for the gentle presence of now. And the beauty of it is, this isn't a rigid rule book. It's not one size fits all. Minimalism doesn't ask you to copy someone else's version of simple. It invites you to create your own. You don't need to give up everything. You just need to let go of what's getting in the way. So if you've been feeling boxed in by your belongings, your to-do list, or even your own expectations, maybe this is your garage moment. Maybe this is your version of Joshua's neighbor June, gently nudging you to look up, to pause, to question what's really serving you. Because once you ask yourself, what can I let go of to live more of what I love? That's when everything begins to shift. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to Bix Book Summary if you haven't already. I create videos like this so we don't just read powerful books, we live them. And if you're ready to go deeper, if you want to experience this shift in your own life, grab a copy of The More of Less. I've left the link in the description below. Supporting the book also supports your journey, and I truly appreciate that. Before you go, take a moment. Think about just one thing, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, that you're ready to let go of today. Let me know in the comments. You never know who might be inspired by your step. Until next time, I'm Bix. Keep it simple, keep it intentional, and most of all, keep creating space for what truly matters. I'll see you in the next one.